Welcome to the Sanity Project podcast, where you can awaken your mind to clarity and success even in today's life challenges. We're here to provide insights and solutions that will help you live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hello, everybody. This is Joanne Victoria with another amazing episode of the Sanity Project podcast. You are here to discover a life of clarity, confidence, sanity, and entrepreneurial success. Our guest today is Laura Staley. Laura is the founder of Cherish Your World, and she supports people thriving in the physical spaces where they live and work and in their lives. A holistic transformation can take place in our spaces, minds, souls, and lives when we take action aligned with the heart-led vision. Laura writes personal essays focused on self-discovery, emotional intelligence, and transformations from the inside out. Laura is a published author of 3 books: Live Inspired, Let Go Courageously, and Live with Love, and Cherish Your World gift book of 100 tips to enhance your home and your life. Very prolific, Laura. Welcome to the show, Laura Staley.
Thank you so much, Joanne. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, I am grateful that you are here because the way you write is very profound, and I think it gives readers and hopefully today listeners another way of hearing similar information, but from a different perspective than they are probably used to. So for the minds of our listeners, how did you get here to this place where you have written these 3 profound pieces of work: Live Inspired, Cherish Your World, Let Go Courageously, Live with Love, Transform Your Life with Feng Shui? All of these words that are very large to me, and I think mostly to our listeners as well. So how did you get here? Were you a little girl who, at 8 years old decided that you had a path already?
Wow. Well, when I was a child, I definitely had a passion for books. I loved reading. They would take me places. And I also had a passion for nature. It was kind of like books, library, the quiet of the library and the quiet of nature were my safe havens and my inner world. I lived a very, very challenging childhood into adulthood that just kind of kept going. And how I became founder of Cherish Your World, actually, my background is I earned a master's and PhD in political science. I taught college students at Ohio Wesleyan for 5 years as a part-time assistant professor, honored to do so. Loved the students, loved the interaction and the learning that I gleaned from that experience. I then became a full-time parent. And at that juncture, we had a flood of a finished basement and lost a lot of belongings, 5 inches of what turned out to be a combination of just water and sewer water, which I think at the time we really didn't have an understanding of that. It was Valentine's night of all things. And about a month after that, and of course lost a lot of items in that flood, 5 inches of dark, cold water, many items ruined, just needed to be thrown out. At any rate, a month later, I was with a family member at the time, and she just was so jazzed. Of course, she had this beautiful home, beautifully appointed. And she said, "Oh, Laura, you've got to read this book about Feng Shui." And I was like, "Feng Shui, Feng Shui, what is this? I don't know. I've never heard this." She goes, No, it's about your space and your life. And no, you'll just love it. And so I thought, okay. And she hands me this book, The Western Guide to Feng Shui, Room by Room, by Tara Catherine Collins, which I love that book, highly recommend it to anyone who's curious. And I opened it to a page that said, "Live with belongings you love." And I was like, what? It's stuff. And I had just lost a bunch of stuff. I had 2 little children at the time. They lost items that they enjoyed. And I was intrigued. I was kind of befuddled, but I was intrigued at the same time. I walked back in my house, Joanne, after that trip, because she was like, look, take the book, read it. I'll get another copy. No big deal, because I just found it fascinating. I read it cover to cover on the trip back home. And as I stood in the dining room of the first story of our home, I looked around and saw hand-me-downs that I loathed. Oh. And then I kind of like did the deeper dive and looked at my life. And I was a full-time parent at the time. I still love being a mom. My kids are grown, they're adults. But at that time I was a full-time parent. I did love that. But I also looked from the perspective of, wow, pretty much up to this point, I had lived according to other people's scripts. So in many ways, I had a hand-me-down life. It was other people's expectations of me, of what they thought my life trajectory was to be. So I had just had this profound aha moment about my life and my space. And the amazing thing is the loathed items went deep. My closet of clothing had hand-me-downs that I loathed. My jewelry. I mean, it was deep and wide. And since I had already lost a number of belongings in the flood, I just began this incredible purging process. Because that one statement of you can live with belongings that you love sparked and began now, what I now know is a lifelong healing and transformational journey that I will do for a lifetime. I found my voice. I found my passion for a lifetime in that profound moment. And I began clearing away so many belongings that and it's not that I ran out to stores and started filling up my space. I took the time to get very clear about my tastes and preferences and what would actually support my life going forward. And I became happier and happier and more joyous and joyful as I went along. And then the books actually came out after another implode of my 22-year marriage coming to a close. My son was a teen at the time, dealing with some challenges. And my daughter drove her off to college for her first day of college when the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back of the marriage happened on the exact same day that I drove her to her first day of college. And going forward, having had that lifelong passion for books, I just said to myself, now is the time to pour these stories from your heart onto paper and get a book out in the world. And that was the catalyst for Let Go Courageously and Live with Love. So that's the first book. And then the book of tips came out of being at a Tuesday tune-up business networking, where all of us were in career transition, and some of us were in both career transition and life transition. So I was basically going from Cherish Your World as this very cool hobby to recognizing that I could take it on as a full-time career path and an expression of love and contribution and service to others.
So do you think that there is a relationship between releasing physical things, such as the books that you had in your own basement that we discussed prior to recording today, and when you had the flood and everything that you had was gone, let's just use that, and the emotions that erupted as a result of that you could see clearly, and then that was part of the transformation. Is there a relationship between personal emotions or physical and mental emotions and books and things and clothes?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because for me, the items in the house, of this recognition that these items were hand-me-downs that I loathed and they actually scared me, sounds so strange, but I had an adult in my life who had very strong, we had very difficult dynamics. Let's just put it that way. And if I wasn't using or interacting with belongings in the proper use and care fashion, and it would always change, right? Mm-hmm. I would get raged at. And it was terrifying. So for me, those objects, I didn't care for them because they were imbued with this rage from this other individual and their projections and their own self-loathing. And so I, in the process of letting go of things that were not me, were never my tastes, allowed me to do incredible, deep trauma release work and get on the trajectory of deeply healing my life and my patterns. I knew I had some of those tendencies and became acutely aware of that with my small children, how emotionally what we now would call emotionally unregulated I was. And I look back now and realize, wow, I definitely had PTSD or even persistent traumatic stress because this individual would still show up like a stalker in my life. And mm-hmm. And so it was very important to do that deep emotional cleanse work along with parting with those belongings. So I know for sure that people's belongings have stories, associations, feelings, memories, all imbued into that object. And it brings that object and that belonging or that item of clothing or jewelry or artwork to life. And the question becomes, does it come to life in a rich and meaningful and inspiring way? Or is it one that drags the heart and soul and being of the person down? And it can be a mixture, because you could have an object that came from a loved one, but the loved one has passed. So you've got this mixture of grief, love going on with the object.
I know I'm just connecting again before we started recording so that the listeners understand what's going on, that I'm in a move. I'm in the process of moving. And in doing so, I'm cleaning out pretty much everything. And one of the things that I went through, I have 3 drawers filled with jewelry that I don't wear. And we're not talking, diamonds and rubies and emeralds. We're talking about stuff. And I got rid of, I don't know, a gallon plastic bag of stuff that is going or has already gone to Goodwill or Value Village or whatever it is. And it's time to release that. Yet in the process of doing this, my daughter sees something and she goes, "Oh, I want this for my birthday." So and I have no problem. I would give it all away, but there's some things I'm still attached to, emotionally attached to them. Either it was from my mother, and, some of the memories of her, but I willingly give them to my daughter. And I willingly, once I made an effort to look at it, you have to look at the things. You have to look at yourself and the objects and the clothes that you have around you and see and then feel it. You have to feel it. And if it has no attachment to you, get rid of it.
Oh, absolutely. That's absolutely right. And sometimes it isn't as simple. Like, it can be really nuanced.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
That piece of jewelry from your mother. So it's got positive associations, but you'll never wear
Absolutely.
that. And somebody really would have joy and wonderful that you've identified your daughter as a recipient of some of those items that you're just not ever going to wear. So it can be a very emotional process for people.
It is.
Not simple.
Those of you who are listening, you've probably been through this, and listen to Laura. And I'm just recalling as well some of the things that I was looking through. There was a ring that was given to me by one of the men I dated. Okay, fine. So there's some jewelry. And my daughter goes, okay, I'll take that. And I said, oh, okay, because I'd forgotten about it. It was stuffed in the drawer, and I forgot about it. And don't wear it. I have stopped wearing jewelry, especially with this COVID mask situation. And my tastes have changed. And that's another thing I think that people have to pay attention to. They hold on to their 16-year-old or 20-year-old incarnation that, it's not the same. Not the same.
That's exactly right. And you speak to a couple of thoughts. So there's the hidden treasure seeker. That is an organizational style, along with the mind melder and the I spire. The hidden treasure seeker often stashes, and we all do this in some form or fashion, right? We stash things wherever, and then we discover them, and we're like, wow, forgot all about this, forgot about the story. And Feng Shui invites us to have an empowered, current day, present time relationship with our belongings and with our lives and with ourselves. And to your point about, upgrade, life is changing, and to embrace that change and embrace the change and the let go and release of objects and belongings that have these associations with our earlier iterations, our 5-year-old self, our 16-year-old self, especially if those items aren't sparking your creativity right now in 2021. Right? Because if they do, great. For instance, I have a framed photograph of myself as a dancer from college, but it's up and framed in my office as an anchor of inspirational creativity for me. Because for me, it embodies that creative dancer spirit inside of me that I love, and informs my writing and informs how I flow through life. Kind of like life is a dance, right? With our hearts and with our souls and with our schedules and our calendars. Right. I'm so glad that you're pointing to that, because I think it's really a really important process, and it can be incredibly transformational and liberating to bring yourself current to today by releasing all these different expressions of clutter, things that you just don't need, use, maybe you love, but you don't wear.
I know. And when I say I had 3 drawers filled with jewelry of old nature, because I used to go to the jewelry shows in San Francisco. It was huge, and things weren't expensive a long time ago. So you just pick things up at $5 here, $10 there. It wasn't hundreds of dollars. And then I'm looking at, I bet if I go through it again today, I would release more of that.
Sure.
And, I would just keep releasing. And it's amazing how once the process begins, it doesn't end.
Correct.
As I say, I'm moving. So I'm guaranteeing that, number one, before I move out of this house in the next 30 days, I'm going to release more stuff, quote unquote. And probably when I'm there, and, the boxes that'll go in the garage, I'm sure I could probably throw away half of them and wouldn't know or care what was in them.
Oh, well, and I just recently heard a story of a man who he and his wife moved to a house. The boxes came and got plopped into the basement. 19 years later, they had never looked at anything down in the basement. And they just called, and of course they stressed about it, right? During on and off during those 19 years. And then finally they called a company and had them come clear away every bit of it. They don't miss it at all. They didn't even open one of the boxes. They were like, you know what? If we haven't opened those boxes in 19 years, we're not gonna. So it can totally look like that. I mean, storage units are the same way. I mean, I think there's a program, Storage Locker Wars or whatever, and
something like that. Yeah,
they'll stash things and completely forget about them and not have an empowered relationship with those belongings. And the thing is, Joanne, some people have lost so much, fire, flood, hurricane, all kinds of situations, right? And if we have an abundance of these items, all these different expressions of clutter in our spaces, there's something so heartening about sharing that wealth and that abundance with other people who may have lost everything. And often that is a catalyst for some people to let go, to grieve and let go, and grieve and let go, and set themselves free and have an empowered relationship with their belongings and with their lives.
Yeah, I don't think people truly understand, unless they've experienced it, how things, whatever it might be, a computer, a book, a piece of furniture, clothes, a coat, a blouse, a pair of pants, affect you. It's just affect us. Sometimes it's a burden to keep hauling things over through the years. I mean, I have you're going to have to help me now, Laura. I probably have 4 banker's box-sized boxes of pictures of my parents, of their relatives, and so on. And I've been carrying them around for decades. And I'm going, why am I doing this? And then now that I have a grandchild, I've got a box set up for him to make some sort of an album of his growth and so on and so forth. But I'm thinking now, why am I the caretaker here? I mean, do we take that assignment and tell us about that? How we just?
Yeah, I mean, I think some people feel it's important to have a collection of family history. So I had another gentleman say that he and his wife, they decluttered deep all throughout their home, and then they downsized and moved. And the realtor was so shocked. She was like, where's your stuff? And he's like, oh, well, I've been listening to Laura Staley and I decluttered. But what they did do is they chose their favorite photographs of family and put it on a wall in the living room. And so when friends and family come, there are these wonderful interactions and stories that the people who have gathered are engaged and excited. And even the grandchildren, right, who walk in and, who's that? And who's that a picture of, et cetera, et cetera. So I think for, depending on who you are and what kind of historian you want to be, you could have different expressions. My encouragement would be to choose the photographs that mean a lot and then put them out and up so that you can love on them and be inspired by the story that photograph tells. And if not, if you're really complete, find another family member who would love those photographs. And then for some of us, it's setting ourselves completely free from the bloodline, from ancestral patterns that were possibly toxic and very dysfunctional. And so for that individual, setting themselves free of family photos is a liberation and a line of demarcation where they say, okay, my life is going in this direction. And that can be its own powerful, empowering, transformational journey. And not necessarily an easy one, but a brave and very courageous one.
So what would you suggest to our listeners that they do as soon as they finish listening to this podcast? At least one more time, people. You know how I always tell you, get a pen and paper, re-listen to the podcasts that I'm sending you, and because you will have missed some great words. So what can you tell these people to do as soon as they finish listening to this podcast?
Oh gosh, if you can, set the timer for 10 minutes and open a junk drawer or pull a box off the shelf in a back closet and engage the process of letting go, because what I can promise you is likely emotions will come up as well as thoughts. And those could be limiting beliefs that are blocking the flow of your amazing life that you want to be living right now and into the future. And if you're not pinged by all of that clutter in your space, you're free to engage with life in a whole new, creative, and beautiful way. And it's its own gorgeous liberation. Keep what means something to you right now and let go of the rest.
Yeah, that's something that people need to do more of, and especially now that those that are listening have a little extra time in their day and their week and their month and their year to focus on their closets, the boxes that are in the garage, the storage that you're paying money for. Pay attention to those things. They're not little things. This is really important.
Yeah, because we've learned that it can actually impact your health, your wealth, your creative expression, your movement forward, all of those areas of life. Clutter blocks the flow, and you wouldn't want cluttered arteries, right? Why have a cluttered physical space?
There you go, people. Clutter blocks the flow. I want to thank Laura Staley for being here today. And Laura, where can people find you?
People can find me at www.cherishyourworld.com.
There it is, and you'll find all the information about how to work with Laura, how to buy her books, and talk to us for about under a minute who Dr. Bernie Siegel is that endorsed your book, Live Inspired.
He's a New York Times best-selling author and a medical doctor. I was so honored by his endorsement. He's written a number of books on health and mental health and emotional health and physical health. And I know there was a recent one that he wrote with his grandson, telling stories of his wife and the love relationship that he had with his wife. He's a very heart-centered, incredibly wise gentleman, and I was quite honored to have his endorsement.
Yes, and he's probably on your local PBS channel somewhere, people. I want to thank Laura for being here, and as I said, please re-listen to this podcast, listeners, because this has many meanings and a lot of them are very deep, and I don't want you to miss anything. So everybody have a great day and move onward. Take care. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com to listen to more podcasts. Check out Joanne's coaching programs and get a free copy of her report, 5 Steps to Achieve Life-Work Harmony. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.